Hey, Roger.
Hey, Bob. Which background do you like better? That one? Or this one?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Which background do you like better? This one or the data chart?
Oh, I like visuals like that.
I mean, this one's a video,
Yeah.
and this one's static.
Whoa.
These are all the samples that we have available that we can plot over the years. So this is early. This area here is the early part here was Gelman when they weren't doing
Right.
much sampling as when Paul took over, and then Danaher took over about here, and kind of just kept the things somewhat constant. Although
You really got to look at this data to see any trends. The other one just pops at you.
yeah, well, the other one you can see over time,
Right.
you know.
And location.
This one is definitely trended. This is a log scale here, so
Yeah.
there's some really high concentrations, and now they're getting down to almost acceptable levels if you weren't in an area where people are drinking the water.
Yeah, if only.
And of course, I had to put another order of magnitude down here because we now have sampling over here, and over my one shoulder, you'll see that there's sampling below 1 part per billion.
Yep.
And some of those are in
your neighbors.
wells. I'm hoping Beth makes it on so she can admit people. Otherwise, if Beth doesn't make it on, I'm gonna need someone else to make a co-host so I could have them admit people while I'm busy taking care of other things.
So you can go ahead.
So Roger, you could make me a co-host and I can perform that function for you.
Are you familiar with how to do that?
Oh, kind of.
Okay, I'll make you a co-host. There. So you should see Harvey. Yep, you got him already. Good. That worked. Now let me test my. Probably saw me hesitate there because every once in a while my computer gets overloaded when I have like 10 tabs open. Test my screen sharing.
Good morning.
So you should be able to see the Google Earth images, right? My cursor showing up all right?
Yeah, looks good.
And let's go to some of these other tabs. Here's the minutes. Here's my presentation. So I gotta go to here. Here's the agenda. Let's see. Oh, I'm gonna give you we got both videos of the tower coming down. Yeah, that should do it. So we need to go back to, let's say, this one. And this one. Shoot. And I'm gonna bring up gallery view. I think I'll be able to see about 40 people once everybody gets on. And then it'll be a multi-page after that. Hey Dan, good to see your face.
Yeah, Roger, I'm here.
Just making.
Oh, two
around.
Dans. Sorry, Dan.
Well, it's good to see your face too, Dan.
He's happy to see. He's happy to see both of us.
Yeah.
I'm just making my rounds.
Yeah. I will say your lighting washes out your face a little bit, Dan Bicknell.
You're not missing anything. Although I'd rather be where James is, it looks like.
I'm not presently there now, but I will be in 2 days.
Yeah, that's Sleeping Bear.
No,
No?
no. A little further south.
Oh, what is that? Warren Dunes?
Yes, sir. You know it. This is Tower Hill. That's behind me. But you do have the right body of water in back of me.
Yeah. I guess I could change my background to something more pleasant too. I think everybody's seen this. What's behind me in the background here are all the data points that we have available to plot over time on a log scale. From 0.1 parts per billion up to 100, more than 100,000 parts per billion. And these marks over here are the goals, like 7.2 and 280 and things like that. I don't know about the rest of you, but I kind of like not having a meeting in August. It seems like we all got to enjoy a relaxing August without having to agonize.
Although some stuff happened while we were gone.
I'm sorry?
Some stuff happened while we were gone.
Yeah, we'll try to catch up on that. But since this is a quarterly meeting, I had a little extra time to prepare for it. With all the other things going on in my life.
Well, a lot of people go on vacation in August in Ann Arbor.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And there's,
for good reason.
Summer's too short. We don't get enough months of summer. So it was good not to have too many other meetings.
So if I could ask the caller whose phone number ends in 1639 to identify themselves, I'll change your name on the screen so that I can remember who it is.
I got to remember to take some screenshots here for Beth. She might not be on time since she's in Maryland, I think. Is it Maryland or South Carolina? So one of those.
South Carolina.
Well, before we get, sorry. Before we get into the formal meeting, just for those who are online, the Gelman review manuscript finally got accepted. Was accepted with minor revisions, and I'm revising it. And Roger, we do have an extension to the 3rd week of September. I don't think we need that long, but it's always better to ask for a longer extension to make the revisions, but they're pretty minor. So,
so you already have the revisions that you want to make. Yeah.
I sent it to you. I have the editor email has the reviewer comments, and those are the revisions we need to address. Those are we need to redress those comments in the revised manuscript, and that's what I'm doing. It always takes longer than I think it should.
All right.
So Rita, what publication is that?
Opinion in Environmental Health.
Elsevier.
Environmental Health and Sciences, I think. Its impact factor has gone way up. It's now 12.5. It'll be the highest science journal impact. It'll be the highest rated science journal I have published in probably in my career, and I'm doing it when I'm retired.
Yeah.
When it can't help my pay raise, you know.
Right.
A pay raise from 0 is still 0.
Well, you have to go into environmental administration and regulation now.
Oh God, no.
So Bob Bailey has a article he submitted. Any status on that, Bob? Got to turn your mic on.
Yeah. I got an email last Wednesday from the editor. He said that he expected the last review this past weekend. So I expect if the reviewer actually did what they were going to do, I should get a response from him this week. And probably a few revisions, or maybe they just didn't like it and figure out where else to publish it.
I think that's happened to me twice in my whole career.
So Bob, why don't you refresh our memory? Your article is about what?
Okay, my article was talking about what is the hazard from having dioxane contaminated water seep into your basement? Because as the water evaporates, so does the dioxane. So if your basement is really wet, you could get more dioxane than you'd like.
So sort of vapor intrusion issue.
I'm sorry, Rita, could you say more about your document?
Oh, sure. So it's a review of the case, and it is different from the most recent past review, which was a chapter of case studies in a publication by Thomas Moore, in that we really include not only an update, but we also include the citizen participation benefit to the activities on remediation and cleanup. In fact, I just read a sentence. I almost, Vin knows, I had to tell him, I reread that chapter, and there's a sentence in that chapter in which Moore describes 4 things that have added to difficulties of cleaning up the Gelman site. And he lists 4 problems. He lists like, changing regulations, the complex geology, I forget the third one, and a vociferous citizenry. So that's what our review is, and it's pretty concise. So I think it'll be helpful when it comes out.
Yeah.
Is that something you can share?
I will share it. I'm looking into what are the options. Usually to get complete open access is expensive. It's like about $3,000 or $5,000 usually.
Oh.
And but what I am doing is I'm citing some NIH grants, which will require that it become publicly available. But after their embargo period. And the other thing I can do is I'm pretty sure I can put it on my website, my personal, professional website, and then provide a link that people can access. I have to look into their copyright. It's the only field in which authors don't retain copyright in science.
Well, thanks, Bob and Rita, for writing those. A lot of work involved, and would be a great publication when it comes out.
Yay. I'll
Yes,
be
thank
happy
you.
when it's done.
So it's 10 after, and if we're going to keep
Yeah.
our schedule, we should let Roger start the meeting here.
Yeah, just want to point out that on Zoom, we have 28 people that I see on my gallery view. So if people aren't familiar with gallery view, you go up to your upper right corner on a computer anyway, and you can click view, and gallery would be in mine, it's the middle one. I'm not sure what immersive is. I'll have to try that sometime. It's immersive view. Oh, I don't want that. Okay. So gallery view shows everybody. And when I'm presenting, you can also be on gallery view and see more than just the one person or whoever you have pinned. And then you can use the slider bar between the gallery view and the presentation to make one bigger or the other. So if you want to see more of the people, you slide it left. You want to see more of the presentation, you slide it right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's see, I want screen 2. All right, so this is the agenda. So just to review with anybody that might be new, these CARD meetings are videoed and will be posted on YouTube in a day or two. And if there's some reason that you want to make a comment that's not shared, you can do it in chat and let people know that you'd like to either turn off the video or when we edit it, take out your video comment. But otherwise, the whole meeting gets recorded. So welcome to this CARD-EGLE quarterly meeting. Normally Beth does the approval of minutes, and I don't see her on the screen because she's out of town. So do you want to take that, Jack, and call for the vote?
Absolutely. The board members present are eligible to vote on approving the minutes, and so all of those board members present who want to approve, please say yes.
Aye. Yeah.
Aye.
Thank you.
Is there any board member who would vote no on this? All right, the minutes are approved. We'll now move on to item 3, old business. My name's Jack Eaton. I'm the director of CARD, and I'll be running this meeting to the best of my ability. We'll start out with item 3A. At the last meeting, we learned that EGLE is not going to move forward on the request for information while the appeal is pending. And so I imagine, Dan, that has not changed.
That has not changed. I don't have any new information.
All right. And do we have any update on the MS4 violation / work plan for the Allen Creek drain?
Yes, there was, we finally got together, all parties, RRD, WRD, Washtenaw County Water Resources Commissioner, and Gelman. We met last week, August 31st, to discuss, the GSI work plan and the MS4 obligations. That discussion reviewed the obligation and requirements of both the Part 201 GSI program and the Part 31 program. During that meeting, additional questions were raised by the parties and on the obligations under both programs. So we didn't really come to an agreement. All parties were going to meet again. We're going back and answering the questions that were brought forth. Were identified, and after that, we kind of come to an agreement, whether it is an agreement or what the next step forward is for both GSI and MS4. EGLE will officially submit a written response. What we are reviewing was RRD was the GSI work plan that was submitted. We will submit a written response to that GSI work plan. But so the update is that we met, we didn't come to an agreement, but we have identified some questions and are going to be meeting in the near future again. So that's where we are.
So can I ask whether the state has taken a position on whether the MS4 violation is subordinate to the work plan?
When you mean subordinate, whether what you mean, the interpretation that Gelman currently has that if you meet the obligations under Part 201, then you meet your obligations under MS4. Is that your question, Jack?
It is, yes.
No, we have not. Said that. Basically, we've said that, hey, you can meet your obligations under the GSI. But at least what we've identified currently is that you still have obligations under MS4.
And the ultimate position that will be taken by the state will be determined by the Attorney General's office. Is that correct?
Right. It'll be in conjunction with all both divisions, WRD, RRD. Yes, but we have not. If you want to say come out, the AG has not come out with an official position. I mean, other than we've come to an agreement that you have obligations under both programs. Fulfilling one doesn't necessarily mean you fulfill the other.
And Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
No, Dan's pretty much covered it.
All right. Go ahead, Dan.
And this is Josh. So just so you know, we're trying to work towards both.
Yes.
So full compliance with 201 and the MS4
Okay.
obligations.
Yes, this is Dan Bicknell. I have a question. Does EGLE believe that Gelman must halt the infiltration into Allen Creek drain to background levels to comply with the MS4 permit?
It's really a WRD question. I mean, they have a compliance flow chart that they use and have spoken with EPA about. And so we're trying to work through one of those end goals, one of those paths to resolution. And that's kind of where the conversation got stuck yesterday was. But ultimately, I think under a 201 or 2013 contaminant plume, that is the plan, is to through what they're doing for their entire,
so when you
out here to reach that endpoint.
Yeah, so your EGLE's position in the discussions you had back on the 31st was that Gelman must attain background levels to comply with the MS4 permit? Or is that one of the open issues that you have remaining?
I don't remember stating that. I remember they do have MS4 obligations, and we're trying to work through one of the compliance options that WRD has set forward in their program with EPA.
And one of those obligations is that they have to clean up to background levels instead of the water quality criteria or.
Oh yeah, that is one of the options. Eliminate the discharge, get an NPS permit, come up with a work plan to get there, have an authorized discharge. There's several different options, and yes, that is one of the options.
And but the goal of the various options is to attain background levels.
That's what some of the questions I think centered around, because there are two options that say the discharge is authorized or you can get an NPS permit. So there's some questions around some items that we're going to look into.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Vince.
I just want to remind.
Is everybody
people-
familiar with that document?
I'm
though?
sorry.
Dan,
I
are you
am very familiar with it.
with
Yes.
that flow chart that you has. Okay.
I am
So
very
that's-
familiar with it, Yash, but one of the problems is that that flow chart has a flaw in it, which is that it allows for a potential NPDES permit, but that's not appropriate because you're dealing with stormwater discharges and groundwater discharges, and an NPDES permit does not cover groundwater discharges. So that's a flaw that is in the EGLE guidance. But the basic question that I had is, and we had a meeting back, I would say about a year ago, where we had EGLE, we had WRD as well as RRD, we had US EPA, GEA representatives there, and it was agreed that for everyone there, that Gelman would be required to clean up to background levels to attain compliance with the MS4 permit. And that's why I was asking whether that had been discussed and been presented to Gelman as a requirement. What I'm hearing you say is that it's still not agreed to by Gelman.
It is not agreed to by Gelman.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yash.
Yeah, if I could just make my comment. Thanks, Jack. And thanks, Dan Bicknell. I just want to remind folks that one of the main issues we have with this as part of the Allen's Creek Watershed Group and the CARD group is that this contamination is close to the surface, if not at the surface. And there are lots of homes near West Park and beyond that have wet basements. And so potential exposure of 1,4-dioxane in basements, as Bob Bailey has written in his article, is a potential issue that we need to address and make sure residents are not exposed, children aren't exposed. The state of Michigan has looked at vapor intrusion with 1,4-dioxane, and I think we have a serious issue that has to be addressed. And I think Dan Bicknell has some good points, and I hope we move forward on that as soon as possible. Thanks.
Anything more on this item? Go ahead and put your hand down, Vince. Moving on to item 3C. At the last meeting, as I recall, we were informed that the city has discontinued the wet basement testing and had no further plans to do that. Is that correct, Patti?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll move right along. Would you like to tell us about the Sentinel well program, if there's anything new?
Sure. So that the contracts for that, for drilling and Tetra Tech's work will be before council. The first meeting in October is what I was told. The agenda is not out yet, but that's what was requested. So if that happens, we should be out drilling beginning of November.
All right. Any comment on that item? Let's move along to the the Superfund site designation update. Does the EPA have anything to add?
I can jump in if there's no one from EPA on.
I thought Diane was here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't see it. Yeah, so we have, as I'm sure you all saw and know, Mrs. Dingell hosted Deborah Shore, Region 5, the Region 5 director. She came out to several sites in the district, and also in Ann Arbor, she went to the water treatment facility and the Gelman area. So the Region 5 director was kind of given a bit of an overview and an in-person insight into what's going on with Gelman, which was really nice. And then from there, as far as timelines and Superfund site designation, to my understanding, not a lot has changed. We're still on about the same timeline. I know that after that meeting, Director Shore was very supportive of doing what she can to push this and to get it done as timely as possible. So they're continuing to work it. Congresswoman Dingell is working closely with them, and we'll continue to. Mrs. Dingell is continuing to do what she can to push this forward, and work closely with them to keep it moving.
So thank you, and convey our appreciation to the Congresswoman. Are there any comments on this particular item? Okay, let's move on to item F. Kathy Knoll, would you like to provide us with whatever you know about the intervener status?
I don't have any new information to share. There's been no determination from the Court of Appeals yet. And we were expecting it by this time. It's been 2 months now.
Well, I don't think it's unusual for the Court of Appeals to take longer than you expect, so that's no surprise, I guess. Are there any comments on the litigation update? Seeing none, let's move along to the Scioto Township contaminated homeowner wells. Do you have anything to report on that, Kathy?
Yes, we sampled 64 homes on during the week of August 22nd. We do not have any data yet. The 522 method was used. The geographic location of the homes was further to the north, further to the east, and to the west of Honey Creek. So that was an expansion of our initial area where we did the testing. So as soon as we have data, I will update you. Thank you.
How were the homeowners selected? Was this voluntary, or did somebody seek their participation?
So Scioto Township had a sign up link on our website for anybody who wanted to register to have their wells tested. People were told we would not be selecting everybody. Keith Gadway made the final determinations. He wanted to get more homes close to the Huron River, closer than our last round of sampling. He wanted to expand the range a little bit, and he wanted to go across the Huron River. So we actually have a couple homes on Daleview across the Huron River, which will be have been tested in this round. And so the residents that weren't selected were notified. We had close to 180, I believe, residents apply to have their wells tested.
Understandably. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Are there any comments on this item? Moving right ahead. Kathy, do you have anything to report about the Knights of Columbus property?
Yes, I do have a little bit of information. I spoke to Doug Luan, our township planner, last week, and apparently they are continuing to try to pursue this development. So what is happening now is the developer has made an offer to the township to attempt to pay for water main extension from the auto mall that's on Jackson Road. This is all very preliminary. Doug Luan and our utilities director have told the developer that is not going to be a sufficient public benefit under our current PUD ordinance. Also, the developer has been notified that the hydrogeologic study has to be done prior to preliminary PUD site plan approval. So everything is in a holding point right now. And I don't know what's going to happen, but the indications are this developer is going to continue to pursue this at this time.
So do you know if this developer owns the property or did they just have an option on it?
They have an option.
And the idea of extending city water to that site, would that also include hooking up to the city sewer system or?
I don't know.
Okay.
And I do know that there is a contract between Scioto Township and the City of Ann Arbor related to water and sewer services. I asked Doug Luan if the developer had independent discussions with anybody from the City of Ann Arbor, and he said he didn't think so. So I don't know where this is going.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this property is actually encompassed in the areas that the city has suggested that they'll willingly supply water. So that'll be an interesting development.
I don't think it is.
Alrighty.
I couldn't find the raise hand button, so I'm raising my hand.
Okay, go ahead.
Kathy, do you know if anybody from the developer or the owner of the property has attended any CARD meetings or watched any of the CARD meeting videos about this subject?
I have no idea. I haven't seen them in attendance at the CARD meetings, but whether they've watched any of the videos, I don't know.
So
I've had no contact with the developer.
So we would have to maybe go to a planning commission meeting to maybe deliver some information that they're not getting.
When you say they aren't getting, you mean the planning commission
Developer
isn't getting?
and the owner.
Yes, but you would have to know that this is going to be on the planning commission agenda.
Right.
This is not slated to be on the planning commission agenda in the near future, to my knowledge.
But we have to be ready for that.
Yes.
It seems like, I mean, there's probably a solution to this, but if they're not participating, you know, if they're not aware of the gravity of the Gelman situation, maybe they need to be brought up to date.
They have some awareness of it.
Yeah, thank you.
So as I recall, Larry Lumpke acted in an advisory capacity for the Scioto Planning Commission and actually made some recommendations about modeling to determine what impact a unified well or a unified drain would have on the plume. And that memo, I'm pretty sure was shared with the developer. So I think that they're aware of the concerns there.
They are. Apparently, according to Doug, they haven't responded well to the memo yet.
Pardon me. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, just refresh my memory, Kathy. Who's the petitioner again on this? Who's the developer? I know that I know that Heisler is involved in this, but is he the principal or who's the principal on this?
I'm gonna have to go back and check now. I do not think that Heisler's involved in this one. I do not believe he is.
Okay.
It's
All right.
Norfolk Development.
You know, it just comes down to being responsible developer. You know, the township and the community has to enforce its ordinances and look out for the public health, safety, and welfare of its residents. And you know, sometimes it just boils down to having a cooperative developer. And if they aren't going to do that, then they should not be angry when the townships do not make decisions in their favor. That's my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Rita.
I have a question for whenever we finish this particular item, but I think this is an old business item that I have.
I don't see any other hands raised on this item, so go ahead.
Okay, thanks. My question has to do with the longstanding MS4 violation of infiltration of 1,4-dioxane in the Allen Creek drain. And I just wonder if there's any information. Oh, I missed it. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I'll back up and listen because I did arrive late. Thank you.
All right. It was covered, and just the bottom line is they're continuing those discussions.
Thanks.
Seeing no other hands raised, I'm going to turn this over to Dan Hamel to present the updates from Eagle.
Roger, I just want to share my screen. How do I hit the share screen down the bottom?
Let me make you a co-chair here.
Yeah, I thought you had to do something.
Yeah, I really need a third screen. So let me get my thing up here, participants, and we'll make Dan Hamel a co-chair, co-host. And I will stop sharing my screen momentarily so you can share your screen.
Okay, let me get to, I'm going to share my screen and let me know when you see a map.
Good.
This is an update on the 2021 response activity order progress, implementation progress. As you can see here, I've covered these before where we have these gold circles. That's where monitoring wells have been installed. Recently, they acquired access in the western area, this area here, and they installed several weeks ago this well cluster. It's a PZ boundary well cluster at this location. It's MW1 147. They installed two wells there. The process is they will drill test boring down to bedrock at these locations. They will vertically sample any water bearing zones as they go down and test them for dioxane. And then yes.
Just one quick thing for the transcript. I think you misspoke. You said western area. This you're talking about.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. This is the eastern area. I apologize.
Yeah.
This is the eastern area. The western area is west of Wagner Road. Basically, a test boring is drilled at each of these locations. The water bearing zones are vertically sampled on the way down and tested for dioxane. And then based upon that analytical result and the geology encountered during the drilling activities, wells are cited. What vertical location do we want to install monitoring wells? And Eagle is involved in that process. Basically, we have a phone call with Gelman when they are set or have their recommendation set for where they like to install wells. We have a conference call and we review the information they have and we are asked questions and we come to a mutual agreement on where monitoring wells will be installed. At this 147 location, there were two wells installed. There was really only one significant water bearing zone. It was about from 80 to 120 feet below ground level. So we installed two wells in that to cover that area, one at the top toward the 80 and one at the bottom of the water bearing zone at 120. I do not have the actual boring logs to give you exactly where they were installed, the exact depths and everything. So there's 2 wells at what is a PZ boundary well at this MW 147. Then they mobilized and went to this location A, which is a Sentinel well, as identified in the response activity order. They drilled down to, started drilling down to bedrock. They encountered a problem at approximately 200 feet, 200 plus feet. The drilling stem stripped some threads on that, so they couldn't continue at that point. But they had enough information. They had not encountered bedrock, but they had enough information that we met with them, and we all decided to install, at least for now, 2 wells at approximately 170 feet and approximately 200 feet. They did have analytical results at 165 and 180 that were in the between 1 and 2 part per billion. So we did an installation to cover that zone, and they did not have the analytical back for the one at 200. Basically, the power outage last week threw a monkey wrench into everything they were doing. And but we went ahead and suggested, and I believe they will be installing a well at that depth. Again, these are Sentinel wells as defined in the response activity order. They're inbound from the prohibition zone. If during sampling activities, detections are identified at trigger points, 3 parts per billion, then these are, then additional work toward the prohibition to the north, toward the prohibition zone boundary has to be implemented. So they, like I said, they will be finishing up installing this location this week, I believe. Again, they have they have to repair or get their drilling stem out of the hole. So I do not know the status of that. That was late last week when that was occurring. And then they will move on to these other Sentinel well locations, B and C. And then the final locations in the western area, they will move on to the locations F, G, and H to install wells. All of these wells were identified in the response activity order and are required to be installed. All these locations have to have monitoring wells installed at them. So that's the current situation. They also have permission now or access to do the Rose Well area installation of an extraction well in this area. Now there is already a well in there, a historic injection well that may be converted to an extraction well, or they may drill a new one, new extraction well, or do both. So they are in that process of getting all that. They have not started installation there, but getting that set to go ahead and install that. Again, that is a requirement under the response activity order. Then there is this Park Lake well remediation area. This is the area that they have, the first process is to submit an NPDES permit for discharge of treated groundwater to First Sister Lake. That permit was submitted, and it's in the review process. I believe Eagle has requested some additional information. So I think that's where that stands. But if that permit is approved, then the next step would be to install an extraction well in this area too, and then have that groundwater treated by a portable system and then discharged into First Sister Lake. Again, that process doesn't move forward until after the NPDES permit is reviewed and approved or not approved. If it's not approved, then there's not a requirement to install extraction well in this area. As far as updates on the remaining installation, these 2 locations in the western area have to, are required to have monitoring wells installed at them. They are still acquiring access from private parties for these 2 locations. They are the update is that they, have been in discussions with the private party owners and are working toward getting that access. I do, once that access is acquired, then they will move over in this location and complete the installation of the monitoring wells. Let's see here. As far as other activities required, there is a, as you know, we discussed already the GSI work plan to do investigation activities in the western area down near the Allen Creek drain. We are, finalizing, as I've stated earlier, finalizing our review of that GSI work plan. On the GSI side of things, once that work plan is reviewed and we give a response back, then those activities, which include monitoring, sampling and monitoring the Allen drain and along at manholes that they have access to, and then also the discharge, the discharge here into the river will be sampled and monitored. So as soon as that that is finalized and our that work plan is reviewed and our comments received, then they will implement that in the eastern area. The western area also has a GSI work plan that was submitted. These work plans, by the way, are posted on our webpage, and it was reviewed over here, and they have started taking some initial samples in the along the unnamed tributary of Honey Creek, but they will really begin the bulk of the work in this fall and winter when access is more readily available. Frozen ground, plants knocked down because of the winter. They can get in and do the work along the unnamed tributary of Honey Creek. And then they also have work along in the marshy area and also along adjacent to Third Sister Lake. So that will start here this fall, winter. Let's see. That's really where we are. Let me see here. They just a quick update. Why don't you go ahead and some questions. I can, while I'm trying to find get some questions here. Why don't you go ahead and.
All right. Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I want to acknowledge all of the progress that has been made, and I really appreciate what EGLE is doing at this time. I think that with any of these there are dual processes. There's the legal process, and then there's the community political process. And I know that EGLE is in the middle of this legal commitment. I just want to say that if there is any plan to discharge into First Sister Lake, there will be an extensive, extreme community resistance, including people camping around the lake to protect it. So I know that EGLE has to follow this process, but we need to also be aware that the community is extremely concerned about this. So again, thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah, I will reiterate, and I think I've stated this before, that NPDES process, again, it's with our WRD. They will review that,
right,
and then they will not issue. There will be a public comment period, and they will not issue the permit until after that. So again, there'll be time for the public to voice its concerns during this permitting process. I do not have a time frame on when that would occur, how far along they are on that process. But I just want to identify to the stakeholders here that there is public comment, that process is it will not be finalized until after public comment period and public have a chance to voice their concerns and what they'd like to see.
Oh, okay, thank you. And as elected official, I just feel that I need to speak up at every opportunity to to remind those involved in the process how strongly our community members are opposed to any discharge. But thank you.
Go ahead, James.
Yes, and kind of in follow-up to what Councilmember Griswold said a moment ago. Question for you, Dan, and for Mr. Moser. What sort of time frame are we looking at before EGLE makes a initial decision regarding the MPDES permit regarding First Sister Lake?
Again,
I'd like to note that the discharge permits are a separate item on this agenda that we haven't gotten to yet. Would it be okay if we let him cover that when it gets to the agenda item?
I initiated the discussion. Yeah, we can.
Okay, go ahead.
You know, that time frame is not, again, EGLE WRD is handling their permitted people. We have not been identified how long that's going to take. You know, I do not, you know, I want to manage expectations. I do not know that process period, the time frames.
So you can't characterize it then a timetable then until the initial decision's made then, in other words.
Right, that's WRD's program. So they will, I can't say, hey, they'll have a comment period within 2 months, you know, no, we can't identify that.
And there's no one from your office, from WRD on this call?
No, I don't believe there is.
Okay.
Again,
Right,
the permit, just realize that the permit was just submitted within the last month and a half, 2 months, you know, maybe, you know, month and a half. So
Right.
it is a, you know, a new submittal for them.
All
to
right.
them.
Appreciate this. Thank you.
Go ahead, Glenn. You're mute.
Okay, the permitting process typically takes 180 days from submission. That's on an easy permit. I expect this one will take longer. I had a question, Dan. You mentioned an injection well at Rose Park area. What is that?
Historic, yes.
What was it for?
Years ago, part of during remediation activities, there was treated groundwater was injected in certain areas for disposal. And so in here, there's a historic injection well that could be modified to become an extraction well. Basically, it's a larger diameter well. It's monitoring wells are usually about 2 inches in diameter. These are, you know, these are 6-8 inch type wells. And so it is identified in the response activity order, this IW2 it's called, and it's on the maps you may see. And so they identified that they may modify that as for the to make it an extraction well, or they may drill a new well, extraction well, or they may do both. So I just wanted to point out that was an historic well that is available to maybe be modified to become an extraction well for that location within that area there.
Sure, thank you. It's a little bit ironic converting an injection well to an extraction well, but thank you.
That's.
Go ahead, Vince.
I just want to make a point about the fact that we need to step up our effort here with Scioto Township exposures in the drinking water and potential basement exposures in the Allen's Creek area. The Environmental Working Group listed 0.3 part per billion 1,4-dioxane as a dangerous level for drinking. EPA has said it's dangerous for 0.35 part per billion in drinking water, 1 in a million exposure. We have significant exposure issues facing the community now. I hope we could potentially get EPA to step up and move faster. They've done that in other sites in Michigan when they see it necessary. I'm really concerned about these exposures now, and people are concerned as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Go ahead, Rita.
I have a very simple question. I just want to know, is Danaher doing anything that is outside of the requirements of the plans that they've submitted, or is it just all restricted to this fourth consent judgment, plans in response to the submitted fourth consent judgment? Thanks.
They're implementing the response activity orders as written.
And nothing more, right? It has to be part of that.
Well, they have not implemented anything more outside. They're
Okay.
Meeting their obligations as required by the court.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Roger.
Well, actually, the company has done some things outside of the order. In the unnamed tributary, which I call it the Sister Lakes Drain, because that's what Gelman's own hydrogeologist calls it. They did some unpermitted dredging west of the marshy area. So I'll just point that out. Dan Hamel, you said there was the 2 parts per billion found in, what was it, location A or location B to the north of Evergreen there?
Yes, there was between one and 2, 1.4, 1.5. Again, the deeper, I don't have the analytical for
That was the deeper of the 2?
No, that was the shallower of the 2. It's 107, approximately 100, between 165 and 180 feet.
Okay, so what wells around that area? How many wells, monitoring wells, exist in that area around that new monitoring well prior to this, at that screened elevation?
Well, Roger, I don't, off the top of my head, I mean, it's the.
No, but I'm sure Eagle looked at that as part of their analysis.
Well, yes, there's wells to the east and west that were prior monitoring wells that are still in place and are still sampled.
And how many?
I don't have the.
How many purge wells are there, and how close are they to that location?
Well, the Evergreen area, LB4, is just to the southeast.
And that's at that same screened elevation?
I don't recall, Roger, off the top of my head.
Can you look into that for the next meeting? I want to see.
Yeah,
I
can do that.
I treat this, thanks to COVID, I think we need to do contact tracing when there's a hit. We need to know where that 2 parts per billion came from, what screened elevation it's part of, and where it might be going. So we need to stop thinking in 2 dimensions. We have to think in 3 and 4 dimensions on this site, because dioxin goes wherever water goes. It's not limited to 2 dimensions. It goes at different layers, and it does it over time. And I'll point out that 2 parts per billion was found in an area that we had asked for monitoring wells earlier. And the company fought that and got the judge to not agree to allow the earlier judge to not agree to have monitoring there. And that was years ago. So had they put those monitoring wells in when we asked them to, and Eagle asked them to, we would have had a 5-year head start on this at least. I'll just point that out. And I'll also point out that the purging they're doing at Evergreen did not stop that contamination. And the company is purging at maybe a third of their permitted capacity right now. Had they continued purging at higher capacity, that 2 parts per billion might have been kept from happening. And now they're talking about adding another purge well, or converting prior injection wells a purge well, and adding that capacity to the limited capacity that they're already having at Evergreen. So the Evergreen has already failed twice, at least. They failed to stop it from getting past Maple. Now they failed to stop it from getting near the edge of the original prohibition zone. And now they're going to use up some of that purge capacity for a Rose well to treat some high concentrations there, but that's not going to do anything with the contamination that's already made it past that point. So I just want to point out that the company is doing as little as they have to, the minimal they have to. And there's nothing, the state apparently does not have the power to require them to do a proper cleanup. And yet we have data that shows that they've been screwing up time and time again. There is no analysis that's done. Maybe there's not enough data to do a proper analysis of what's required to remediate this and keep it from getting to more township wells and eventually to the city's water intake at Barton Pond. I just want to point that out. People need to think about the data that, we should have enough data. We should be able to model where the dioxin is going and how fast. This should have been predicted even with the limited amount of data we had. And we did kind of anticipate this in asking for those monitoring locations. Now, just because we have monitoring locations every quarter mile, maybe, doesn't mean that we're going to find all the offshoots. Because as we found, there's different layers of aquifers throughout this whole area. So there may be a lot more monitoring that needs to be done to find out where the dioxin really is. Anyway, I just want to make that point.
Roger, to follow up on your point, underneath.
Excuse me, Dan. Let's go to Josh first. I think he wanted to respond to that, and then I'll call on you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, thanks. Roger, I'm not going to disagree with anything you said, but in context, again, you're correct. This is not an aquifer restoration cleanup. State law doesn't require it. And, historically that we were working, I know it's changed over time, but in the recent history, we've been working from 85 parts per billion criteria. Critique that all you want, right or wrong, protective or not, what it was. And yes, Gelman was operating within the confines of the consent judgment for non-expansion above 85. Now we're at 7.2 as our revised criterion for drinking water. And again, you have to look at it in context. They're going to do what's necessary and what the consent decree requires to meet the objective of non-expansion, which means beyond the prohibition zone above 7.2. Again, this is a limitation in our laws that's memorialized in the consent judgment. So I'm not saying, like I said, Roger, everything you said was correct. But, Gelman's not going to chase 1.5 parts per billion at this point. We just have to kind of realize that. We're going to do what we can to make sure that the data we have, and the data we collect can do what you say. It's predict where this might be going, where it might actually be a threat above criteria. But our legislature set our law, set our risk, factor at 1 in 100,000, not 1 in a million like EPA may use. And again, EPA has a range. And our 1 in 100,000 fits within their range of criterion. Their lower end might be less than 1, but their high end will be greater than could be greater than our 7.2. You just never know at this point. So again, you're correct, but we have limitations. We're working from the 7.2 We are asking and obviously doing more. And one thing I also want to comment on is that, even though this order was put in place by the judge, this was a negotiated agreement before it became an order it started with the state and Gelman to do more. And they agreed to do more to meet the 7.2 criteria before it was even law. And then, everything went into court and then the intervention and all that stuff. And, it got more complicated, obviously. But, we can't say that Gelman is not meeting the intent of the law. The law may be flawed, and there's a lot of work we still have to do. But, they are doing the work that's required to meet the law at this point.
I appreciate that, Josh. And I think I've acknowledged that before, the Eagle's in a tough position because they're stuck with the law. But as citizens, we're not. And as a homeowner who has a well in the area that's heading, I have a little bit more vested interest than consultants and lawyers.
Thank you, Josh. Dan, I want to apologize for interrupting you, but now it's go ahead.
Yeah, just to follow up on these locations of these additional monitoring wells, they were established before we knew that Scioto Township had residential wells on the, if you will, north side of M14. And I think now that it's been well established that north of M14, there are residential wells which are impacted. Eagle could go back to court, or the interveners could go back to court and present to the judge this additional information and request that the judge order additional monitoring wells north of M14 to track this area. And the extent of the contamination that they need to track to isn't limited to 7.2. It should be limited to technical feasibility, which is the method 522 down to 0.15 parts per billion. So there's nothing that prohibits the interveners or Eagle going back to court, presenting this new information, which didn't exist when the negotiated proposed Fourth Amendment consent judgment was put in place, to ask the court to require Gelman to do what is right, technically right, which is to put wells, monitoring wells, on the north side of M14 to project where and estimate where this extent of the dioxin contamination is.
Thank you, Dan. Go ahead, Eric.
I have something that's off topic, Jack, so maybe if you would just put me sort of at the end of the agenda, I'd appreciate it.
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, just for the public record, I would like to explain that while this agreement was negotiated by the lawyers and other entities, it was never approved by the public bodies. And I would go further to say that our lawyers were negotiating with limited input from the elected officials who are responsible for setting policy. So yes, it was negotiated, but it was never approved by the governmental entities or the elected policymakers representing community members. Thanks.
So you're suggesting that lawyers should listen to their clients? Oh, let's move along. I'm going to go back to Dan now, and hopefully he has an update on the county and Eagle homeowner well sampling.
Well, let me do a quick little, did the figure change? Did the figure change on implementation? I'm not quite finished with the implementation. So everybody is aware what is going on and what is being planned. I also, do you see a new figure of the site itself now?
Yep.
Okay, so what has gone on is required in the response activity order is there is extraction wells that are required to be put on the Gelman property. 2 of 3 required wells have been installed, TW24 and TW25. These have been hooked up to their system and are extracting contaminated groundwater and being processed through their system. And that groundwater is being treated. A third extraction well is required under the response activity order. They did a test well down here, test boring, and the geologic materials encountered were not good for installation and extraction out of that area. There is a third well required, so we have not finalized a location of that third well. What is identified on this figure also is in the response activity order, or in the proposed fourth amended CJ, the language in that is part of that response activity order. There is potential phase 2 wells identified, and they aren't required to be installed at this time, but maybe in the future they could be installed. So we will be taking a look at these areas for the installation of a third required extraction well on the property. So it just has not moved forward from that, but we will be working with Gelman to get that third extraction well installed. Other information that I wanted to point out, and I think I did it at the last meeting, is they also are required to do some source area remediation, and what is identified in there is phytoremediation, the use of planting of trees, the lowering of groundwater by the trees to inhibit downward migration of contaminated soil being a source of dioxane. They have installed their phytoremediation trees in the former pond area. And then it is also proposed for the the marshy area here. So these have been installed. These have not been installed. They have a permit, but they are planning, or if that moves forward, we'll move forward here this fall and winter when access to this area allows, the winter, the frozen ground and that type of thing allows better access to this area. And then as another on-site activity that is required under response activity order is they will be installing a heated soil vapor extraction system to extract in the unsaturated soil area in the former burn pit area. The response activity order requires installation of that heated soil vapor extraction system, and then after that system has run its course, then this area, this whole area here will be capped, or concrete will be put back on there. The concrete is already on there, has been on there. They have removed that, done some utility work. This is the area where the recent water tower was taken down. This is the water tower area right here. And so they have not started the installation of the heated soil vapor extraction system, the actual wells put in there yet. So I will keep you posted on when those activities that are required under the fourth amendment, under the response activity order, have started. Let me see here.
Well, Dan, can I ask you a question right now while you get this?
Sure. Go ahead.
You mentioned the 2 purge wells, and they had really high concentrations.
Yes.
It would really help if you had Gelman's plume map overlaid on this. I can do that when I do my update. But you'll note that both of those locations are outside where Gelman thought the plumes were at those concentrations. And I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yes.
And also you said that they're purging from these. But I think there was some time, 1 or 2 months, where they did not purge from both wells.
Yes, Roger, when you install extraction wells that have suddenly a very high concentration, which these are what you want to happen, they have a groundwater treatment system that they have to keep in equilibrium to meet their NPDES discharge permits. So these high concentrations, especially at TW24, TW25, they had to, once they put it into their system, they had to suddenly they were, those high concentrations through that equilibrium, their system out of equilibrium, and they were not, they could not meet their NPDES discharge permit requirements. So they stopped extracting and started working on, what do they need? Additional pre-treatment activity, additional, additional flow changes. So they stayed within.
Is that because the ozone treatment system never encountered purge wells at that high concentration?
Well, I can't answer that, Roger. If they never encountered, it is.
Take a look at that, at the data to see, because they had much higher concentrations from purge wells in the past.
Right.
And they handled it, and they were able to treat down to non-detect. So what's changed that now 2,000 and 4,000 parts per billion from a couple purge wells increases the equalization pond levels? Remember, because this isn't going directly into the treatment system. This is going into pond 3, where the purging from the other wells is getting mixed, so that the average is around 400 or 500 parts per billion, not 4,000 parts per billion. So why is it that, what is it about these two purge wells that's causing that their treatment system is now undersized to treat to permitted levels? What is
Roger, it was a temporary, with a chemical oxidation treatment system, it's chemistry.
Yeah, it's chemistry, but
I'm saying they needed.
What is it that's changed in the input other than the concentration level, which have already shown in the past they could treat from much higher levels to non-detect? How come they can't do that with their current treatment system?
They are doing that. They needed some time to figure what that chemistry, how they had to change that treatment system in pre-treatment and post-treatment to meet the NPDES obligations.
Maybe we should see the details of their data to substantiate their claim that it's all chemistry. Well, what is the chemistry that's causing this problem?
Well, Roger, that is not as a regulator. The NPDES permit has those obligations. I'm not sure that we can require that information, that we would evaluate their treatment system in that way.
Somebody
we aren't, so I'll take a look at that. I'll check that out. But I just want to point out that
what's so different about these two purge well locations? Is there something else? Is there some other contaminant that they haven't sampled for in those two locations?
Roger, we have no
Dimethylamide,
information
perhaps, DMF, that they haven't sampled for that could be causing the treatment system to go out of whack. Something that was been ignored for all these years.
We have no information. I have no lines of evidence that indicates that.
Of course
Roger.
not, because they're not sampling for it.
I'm just saying that
when you see a clue, you got to think like a detective. You see something out of whack, that should register in your brain and say, why is that? We need to ask good questions.
Okay.
When you're in these meetings.
I'll check that out and see if I can gather some information.
Rely on you and the AG to ask these questions, because the company is not in the room with CARD people who might think about these questions. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Roger. Go ahead, Vince.
So I just would like to refresh our memory as to what level are they? I think they're purging into Honey Creek. What level is that purged water when they're discharging it, Dan?
Under the current NPDES permit, they're allowed a daily maximum of 22 for short time, a one-time period, but I believe it's 5 ppb that they have to stay under.
Yeah, so that now is exposing more potential wells in South Township to levels that are considered not safe by many experts. So just, this is just another disaster on top of another disaster. It's just unexpected,
Yeah, I think the effluent is actually seven parts per billion monthly average.
Flowing through South Township to the
average. That's an average. It's 5 or 7. And
Yeah,
then a
they're-
daily, they're allowed a daily maximum,
Yeah,
one
I think their
time.
detection level might be 5 parts per billion. They're using a looser detection level in their effluent testing.
Well, again,
All this, if
we're-
you want to understand too, they submit an MPDES permit report to WRD, and I get a copy of it, and I post it every month.
Right.
So every month you can tell how
yeah,
much was
absolutely.
treated, how much water they brought in, how much they, what the concentrations from the different extraction wells, what they treated and what they discharged.
Yeah, and for some of those, they were not purging from both of those wells when.
Absolutely. They, as they reevaluated and tweaked their system to make sure they stayed under the NPDES permit, discharge requirements. Yes, they stopped or slowed the extraction from those wells until they got the system equalized to be able to handle those higher concentrations
And
extraction.
they didn't seem to know that was going to be a problem when they, even though they must have known what the levels were in those locations, even though they weren't shown on their maps. I think that's part of the hidden data. There's some sampling that was done early in 2016 and 17 that could have shown those high levels and could have gotten them ready to tweak their system for, before 2022 comes around. There's 5 years in there. They could have been doing something.
Well, I think once again, we're bumping up against the limits of what our state law provides. And this just emphasizes the need to seek more help. So then, Dan, did you want to move on to the next item?
Yeah, that is at the, let me see here. Washtenaw County Health Department. Yes, Jenny couldn't be here today. She asked me to, do you guys see a new map?
Yep.
And these are the wells in 2022 that were sampled as part of the long-term monitoring program, the wells to the north here, and then also Lakeview. This is wells along Lakeview. The areas that are identified in red where detections were detected. Again, if you looked at the text, as I previously stated, our drinking water lab now has set a detection limit of 0.5 parts per billion, which is less than the 1 part per billion that we historically, used to do for wells for dioxane. And this is Elizabeth Road area. These are areas that have historically had contaminated in the 1 to 3 part per billion range. But there was one new detection in the Elizabeth Road area below 1 part per billion, I think at 0.9. And that was right adjacent to one of the wells that had historic detections since the mid 90s. So there was no new detections outlying where we had known detections before. And so that these, again, this is the 2022 data. I believe there is still some wells that along Elizabeth. Elizabeth is sampled twice a year. So they completed that sampling, I believe, the week of August 22nd, 24th. We may not have all the data in, or Jenny may not have all the data in, and have made for that second sampling and made notifications to the homeowners. So this is, I wanted to also point out under this that we have been planning our 2023 long-term monitoring. We have decided, at least for one-time sampling, we have expanded these areas to the north into Scioto Township to, based upon the information as you discussed here tonight, Scioto Township sampling. So we will be doing an expanded to the north, about 244 wells next year, from April through August. That's when the sampling will occur. Again, it'll be 0.5 parts per billion will be the detection limit used by our laboratory, by the drinking water lab. And we expanded it this one time, And, but I want to point out that to manage expectations that we did that based upon the Scioto Township information. But again, this long-term monitoring is related to, you know, what wells are at risk, and risk is defined for the Gelman site as a concentration in drinking water above 7.2 criteria. What I'm saying is we will take a look at the data, but an expanded and, you know, expanded wells again will not be, you know, I don't want to guarantee that that greater number will be done each year. We will be selective and base our sampling upon wells that are at risk in the current situation of the groundwater contamination. But we will, next year, we will do more to the north and Scioto Township.
So then the expansion into Scioto Township will be, you'll coordinate that with the township. So you're not duplicating efforts, right?
I believe there will be some coordination. I believe we have taken, you know, taken their data, and, you know, there will be a couple of confirmation wells. You know, we will do some of the ones that they've done as confirmation next year, but we won't be doing all of the ones that were done by the Scioto Township. But in general locations, we will, based upon, you know, that information, we will collect. Again, we're not going to be doing as many, you know, to the north. Like I think there's been 64 plus 30 some plus some other ones. We will be doing a selected number, but I'm just pointing out that we will be moving north with our long-term monitoring. And again, realize that what we're trying to do is to determine if there's immediate risk, you know, of wells, of drinking water above 7.2. So
Hey,
we
Dan,
will.
this is Kristen. I just wanted to add, we've been in ongoing communication with Scioto Township and
Yes,
their
I knew you were.
consultants through the whole process. So they
Yes.
know where we were planning on expanding, so
Yep.
that they had that information as well, since they're sampling, I think, before we will, right? They're doing over the next few months.
Yeah, they just finished one up, and I believe there may be some plan. But again, we always, you know, I mean, we will always, or the health department, we will always coordinate that way and try not to duplicate, you know, without a reason. And again, we will do some of their wells as a confirmation.
And before I call on Roger, one more question. This testing that EGLE is doing with the county, the polluter is not paying for these tests. This is the state and the county paying for these tests, right?
No, it's the state paying. Basically, under this program, the long-term monitoring program, and it's not just for Gelman, it's across many sites, a lot of sites. We hire the local health department to collect the samples and coordinate locally, collect the samples, and then send them to the EGLE laboratory, and then coordinate the notification of the individual well owners. So they are the ones that we hire the county to do that. But it's a state program, but it's not, you know, it's state money. Gelman is not paying for this.
Go ahead, Roger.
Dan, where your cursor is about where, well, move it back down to where you had it. Somewhere in there, the Knights of Columbus property is a little bit to the west and along Dexter Road there. And right next to that, about where your cursor is where Scioto found detectable levels of dioxane in a homeowner well. So I'm guessing that this map that you're showing was made before Scioto's results for that well.
Roger, this map is what we completed under our long-term monitoring for 2022.
Right. So that
so these are the wells that we
2022. This one, the date of this map, is that right?
This does not include Scioto Township's data, Roger. This is the Washington County.
But this map was created early in 2022.
No, this is the results. This is the map of where
now,
all the wells that were sampled.
When was this map printed?
Jenny identified probably within the last month. This is the results.
Then why weren't the Scioto hits shown on this? Because there'd be
Because
a
we
red
didn't,
dot
this
right
is,
where your hand
this is
right where
our, this is the data
cursor is.
from the long-term monitoring sampling. This isn't SIO's data. This is our data that we do, that long-term monitoring, and this
Okay.
is the wells that were
Okay,
determined
so
in
this doesn't include any of
2021.
SIO's data, even though SIO's data was available when this map was printed.
Right, and
Right,
I,
just like SIO's map doesn't include our data. This is for the long-term monitoring program, and so we have to, we report that separately for our financial
so
purposes and things.
I understand.
If there's a
two different
request
jurisdictions
for a
involved.
combined map, we could
There-
certainly entertain that. Is there a
There's
request for a
I
combined
have the
map,
combined
Roger?
map. I have the combined map. I'm not worried
Oh,
about
well,
that.
great,
What
then
I
you
want to
can
point
share
out
it.
to people is that here you are working with the county to do the sampling for the state. So the two jurisdictions, the two government entities are working together. Yet they're not working together with SIO Township apparently to include
I
their
object to
data.
that statement. We are.
Well, but they're not
This is
showing
this
up.
map. If you'd like us to show you a map combining both, with the report,
Kristen, let me talk.
out, Dan,
Kristen,
Roger,
I just want to make a
Dan is
point.
reporting out on our results,
Kristen, I
not
just
on
want to make
SIO
a point.
Township's results.
I just want to make a point that you're not including SIO's data.
Yep, that's clear.
Not on this map. That is correct.
Right. Okay, just want to make that point. And will that location be one of the locations to sample, to resample? I'm gathering from what Dan said that that's true. That location will be sampled.
Roger, I can't answer. I'd have to go back and see what locations that were chosen between Washtenaw County and the state. We sat
Pretty
down and we
extensive.
took a look at that. So I don't know if that specific address is on for next year.
Because that's kind of important for not only homeowner sampling, but also the KFC development site. They really should know that. Anyway, I wanted to point that out, that it's really important that we have a unified database that all entities can use for discussions like this. Because if somebody just tuning in, they'll say, well, there's no dioxane there. You don't have any red dots and there's no blue dots. Well, yeah, there was a red dot there. And it should have been on this map. It should have been a timely map. This shouldn't be a map from the early January 2022. This should have been from this year.
For purposes of time constraint, I'm
I'm going to lower my hand now.
Yeah, I'm going to ask that we move along. Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, are you talking to me now?
I'm calling on you, Kathy. Yes.
Okay. I just want to add a few pieces of information. SIO has been in regular contact with the county on the well testing. We've met with them. We have ongoing dialogue. SIO doesn't have any concerns about the communication process going on with the county. It's been good. And for that matter, I've had regular contact with Dan Hamel also. The Knights of Columbus site was one of the sites that was sampled with our last round of well testing that was done on August 22nd. We do not have the data yet. The August 22nd sampling is our final sampling for the year. We will not be doing any more rounds of sampling. I think that helps to clear up a few questions that emerged. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Are there any more comments on the county well sampling? Let's move on then. Dan, did you have anything more to say about the NPDES permitting?
No, I mean, we talked about the First Sister Lake, the status of that. And as far as the NPDES, the renewal of the current discharge permit for the Gelman treatment system, that is still ongoing. I don't have any new information. We have discussed with WRD. The process will be, as for any NPDES permit, is they will, once that permit is developed in a draft, it will be shared with Gelman, and there'll be discussion between Gelman and WRD. And then that permit will be available for public comment both permits, the First Sister Lake and the renewal. That's the process it will be for both of them. So I don't have any dates of any additional information.
Dan, if you're done showing your slides, you can share your screen. I can get ready.
Okay, stop share. Did mine go off?
Yeah.
You did. And so under your update, there's item D, if there's anything new that you want to report that didn't fall within any of those prior categories.
I just had a couple items I want to make sure people are aware of. I briefly said about the power outage last week that shut down the treatment system. So they had to work through that. The treatment system is up and running again. But that electrical shutdown of the whole area that stops the treatment system. They did a proper notification and the proper process required under the consent judgment under the response activity order. EGLE was notified. We worked, and we were notified when it was shut down, what was going on, what their plans, and then when it was turned back on again. So just wanted to point that out. That can be also, it will be identified on the NPDES monthly reports, the quarterly reports. You'll be able to tell exactly what is going on with the treatment system under any one of those reports. And those reports are posted on our webpage. Then I also wanted to just get an update that there was, from this group, there was a request for legal documents that have ongoing legal documents that we had not really posted before, or all of them. They are currently being posted. So our webpage now has the legal documents that people had requested, during this legal process. So they are posted now, and any future documents will be posted too. Just a little quick update as we are updating our Rockworks model with 2021 data, and expect to have some type of new figures and new information, at least depictions of 2021 here this fall. So it's an ongoing process. We update it every year based upon the data from the previous year. I also just wanted to let people know that we are coming up on or planning our EGLE will be sampling the surface waters like we do once a year. I expect that to occur in early November. That's the last time we did it, last year in November. So again, I'll keep you posted on when that has occurred and when that data will be available on our webpage. That's all I had. So does anybody have any questions?
Vince has his hand up. Go ahead, Vince.
Thanks, Jack. So Dan, as we've asked in the past, can you try and do these surface water tests during dry spells and not near or close to heavy rain events? So
yeah, that's what we try to do. We always try to do any of the surface waters, especially with the Allen drain. We'll do Allen drain, even though it's not a surface water. We'll do the sampling on selected areas, Allen drain, like we do every year. But as we request when to any liable parties, we will do that during dry. No precipitation within the previous 72 hours, approximate. That's what we try to shoot for.
Well, I think people are pretty shocked at the levels we're finding in the Allens Creek, near the surface. So it shouldn't have happened. Doesn't really meet state rules, in my opinion, either. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Vince. Oh, Glenn had his hand up for a moment. Did you change your mind? You're mute.
I'll ask later.
Okay, go ahead, Roger.
Just a quick thing for Dan Hamel. When you post things to the updates on the website, is there any way you can get back to including the date of the item if it's not a group item? What DEQ used to do, we used to have a date associated with it. For instance, I can go to the DEQ website and I can see that there's a database available, but it doesn't tell me what month of the database is.
I believe the title tells you, Roger.
No, it didn't. No, but you should have a field, a separate field for the date that it was of the item and maybe even a second field that shows the date it was posted. Well, if these are posted chronologically, then you don't need the date posted because we can go back and look at it. But it's really hard when you have 1,200 items to know whether you're seeing the, what's the latest item. Is it always going to be at the bottom of that list?
Roger, I can't comment on the structure of what the tool that we have for posting.
Can you pass that along? Because I've looked at that list that's available on other sites, and they do show the full date, not just the month.
What I would like, Roger, is, you know, I'm not real good at asking the question the second time around. Can you send me an email specific, you know, quick little email, what, you know, what's your question specifically, and then I'll have that to take
and
to our
the other question. I'll just say real quick. When you do the sampling of the surface water, you're going to use the 0.5 parts per billion sampling.
Yeah, I believe that'll be the result.
Okay, thank you.
With that.
Alrighty.
I'm trying to lower my hand.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, Roger, I'm just on here right now on the website, and I see a date with everything that's listed, so I'm a little confused.
So maybe Roger could take a screenshot and
Yeah, could you?
Um,
Exactly what you're talking about? Because, I mean, we should be able to customize the fields that show if the data is available. But
alrighty.
just send it to me later.
And so then at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Roger for his update. Roger, you're mute.
Mute. So latest news and observations. And I think one of these is my update. Yeah, so here's my notes, what I've been doing the last few months. And perhaps Dan Hamel, you might want to consider doing something like this too, is I create this, this happens to be in a Google Sheet, Google Slides, a list of things I'm going to cover, and I have links in here for visualizations, and then this becomes part of the record. So it's like my notes for the whole meeting that I'm going to be covering, and this gets used in the minutes for the meeting. So I've got a couple first things. We talked about the water tower coming down. How many people on the screen have seen the videos of the water tower coming down? Here's my video that I took in front of the, you hear that little boom? That's when they took out the support for the tower. They had a big sound at the end. Okay, so that was my video. Turns out, I think this is MLive's video. Here you can see the, are you seeing this all right, by the way? And there's a little more slow motion starting, and then it goes down. Boom. Well, it's kind of anticlimactic. You expected an explosion, right? Anyway, why did they take the tower down? They needed access to this area here. Is my cursor showing up all right on the video?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Looks good.
So this is an area that they needed to do some remediation in, you know, either from the pond 1 remediation or from the burn pit, which is in this area here. These two structures are still there, I think. This was a holding tank for water, and this is the pump house. So those are probably going to come down too, since they're in the same area. But Nowhere in the news story for this did it say why the tower was taken down, because it had been empty and unused for years. But of course, it wasn't always that way. They used groundwater for their process water. So they took the tower down to make room for the remediation of the burn pit and the former Pond 1. Now, I'll show some images here later that shows that the footprint of where they're going to do the remediation did not actually include the footprint of the water tower. So it's not clear whether the burn pit contamination really extends to the water tower base, or whether that was former Pond 1 material migrating underneath where the water tower was. There should be some data that shows why they took the water tower down to get access to that area. That area is, they think it's contaminated apparently, because they took the water tower down. So here's some screenshots. Let's see, I think I have that already up here of the burn pit area. I don't know if this is, I might have to move this to the other screen. Let's see, that didn't work. Let me just bring it up again. Yeah, here we go. All right, so here's an aerial view. This is Google Earth base layer. And what you'll see is that the water tower standing, here's where the burn pit is. Here are those new monitoring locations that I discovered from this aerial photograph that we don't have any data for. That's currently being hidden because of the confidentiality agreement. This is where the burn pit has been depicted to be, or here. Again, it doesn't include the base of the water tower, so something happened. These are just other reports over the years that show where Pond 1 was and Pond 2 was. Well, you know, Pond 1 wasn't anywhere near the base of the water tower. The burn pit wasn't really there. It's close, but it's not right underneath it. So apparently the contamination from one of the other of those former treatment facilities that Gelman had extends into where the water tower had to be. So here's Pond 1, Pond 2 is over here to the left, Pond 3 is way down here. There's some spray irrigation here area that was over top of where Gelman used to have a septic field. But the burn pit was limited to this little area here, supposedly. So I'm just stepping through these different images. So here's the septic field that they used to have. And here's this is the area that they said had to be remediated in the remediation order. Again, they didn't include the base of the burn pit or of the water tower. And in fact, they don't even include it here. This is the base of the water tower. So it's not part of the former pond area, and it's not part of the burn pit area. So, okay, maybe they just needed to get it out of the way so they can run some pipes or something. All right, so that's what I'm finding out. And here's my images, what I went on and took of those wells that were in the parking lot area, the driveway area, that shows that these are monitoring wells that we don't have any data for, still do not. Here's some where they supposedly did sampling according to maps they provided to Washtenaw County. These are well permit locations. We don't have any data for those as to, you know, the actual built wells or any sampling from those wells. And again, this is what the size of the comparison of where the burn pit used to be and where they need to remediate. So the question is, okay, shouldn't there be something up here too? Because if that's the general flow of groundwater, if it got down to the groundwater area. And these are the sample locations, soil sample locations. Now I'm going to go back to 1990, the only plume map that Gelman showed that shows the contamination from the burn pit. So this is an image of that, and I'm going to scroll back. So this is the burn pit area. Here's the water tower. This is back in 1990. This is where Gelman projected the burn pit contamination is going to go. Now the burn pit is right at the surface. So it might behoove us to look at all the soil sampling locations and wonder, have there been any more recent soil sample locations that's still not made public that would help answer this question? What's really going on at this really high concentration site where they had 1 and 2 million parts per billion in 1988 and 1998, and no comprehensive soil sampling done since in the last 24 years. So this was the 1990. This is not, they didn't present this as one map, they presented it as 4 maps. Each of these shaded areas was a separate sheet of paper. It's only through Google Earth that I was able to put them together as one whole map. So this is 1990. Here's the current one. And if we look at it in 3D, this is what it looks like. So that's that. I wanted people to have an image of that and understand that there's a lot of high concentration still at the core, some of which we don't have the data for. Still being kept secret because of the confidentiality agreement. Supposedly that data was analyzed by competent consultants and lawyers, but the public has not seen that, and it's been basically 5 years since that data must have been existing. I will point out that it was shortly after Paul took over, there was a DEQ stakeholders meeting with the DEQ and Paul and a few of us who were official members of, the meeting was restricted by the DEQ at the time to only 2 people from each stakeholder group. So I happen to be one of them. From it was not back in there. We didn't have a card yet. I might have been part of the IPC, or maybe just because it was SRSW, I was able to be involved in this. At that meeting, Paul, Vice President, said he understood that the Gelman name had a bad reputation, and to resolve the problem, they would paint over the Gelman name on the water tower. And then maybe take it down. Well, 24 years later, they finally took it down. Meanwhile, the Gelman fire well, one of their 5 supply wells that supposedly provided water to the water tower, that is one of the 4 wells. I'm not even sure if it's been plugged yet. We don't have any record of the fire well just north of the water tower ever being sampled recently. And if it was plugged, was there a sample done before it was plugged? That did not happen with the other 4 Gelman supply wells. They were plugged without a final sample being taken, even though back in the early days, a couple of those wells had double and triple digit parts per billion. apparently at a depth that's equal to the E aquifer. So when Gelman says the E aquifer was uncontaminated back in those early days, they're ignoring their own limited publicly available samples of their production wells. I just want people to reminded of that. So this is where those wells are. This is, by the way, this is rotated. So this north is to the right here on this. So to the front of the building 2 or building 1, and then behind building 2, and then again here's the water tower and the fire well that's right here. We don't know if that fire well, does anybody on the screen know that fire well still exists, and when's the last time it was sampled? One more thing, when back in the day when Gelman was cooperating with the citizens and the other stakeholders, and we met monthly in Kim Davis's office, one meeting happened right after Chuck Gelman's office had caught fire. So he took us in to show the damage done to Chuck Gelman's office. The sprinklers had gone off and put out the fire. And at that point, the sprinklers were fed by the water tower, which was groundwater. And you know it was groundwater because around the edge of Gelman's office was this 4-inch water stain, rust stain from the sprinklers. What we don't know is whether there's any dioxane in that water. I just think it's kind of ironic that fate said, I think I should torch. Apparently it was a fancy lamp that caught fire and torched his office, and it's just kind of interesting that happened to be during a time when the company was cooperating with the citizens, and we actually had that information. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next item. I just want to point out that SIO's recent sampling round has not yet been shared with EGLE. My question is why? Because earlier rounds were shared, and those earlier rounds data was put in the database. But the recent database does not include those, and I'm not sure if the consultant made that decision or somebody at SIO made that decision, but those homeowners volunteered, and I was one of them, volunteered to have their wells tested. And I fully expected the data to show up in the—
Roger, the data will show up. I have to put that individually into our database. They did share the May sampling event. They haven't shared the one they just did because they don't have the data.
I know the one they just did, but the May one, you don't have that data.
I have that data, and I will put it into the database when I get time. It's not an immediate. It's our database. It's an older one, and I have to do it individually with.
So they didn't give you an input format like I mocked up for them of, if you make it the same format as what the company provides as a spreadsheet, you could just take it in as one fell swoop. You can't do that on this one because you have to individually add each well and then individually add each.
Right. I have to go in and make a spot for it in the database, basically the address.
Right.
And then I can upload, over years as long as there's a spot, but I have to go in individually.
You have to, I understand you have to put in the address first and know the XY.
Kind of a well location. Yeah, it's called well location.
Right.
Well.
Yeah. Well, anything I can do to help you with that, I'll be glad to help, because that's what I did for 40 years.
Okay.
How many of the former back to the sampling here, SIO has the link here, and this is an image from their website that shows that since the SIO is not going to be doing all the sampling that they have been doing, and the state's not going to take over that, and the company's not paying for any additional sampling, there's 3 places that you can get sampling done that you can get detection levels below 1 part per billion. So these are the three. So it's either 22 method, it's either 0.3 parts per billion or 0.5 parts per billion. So EGLE's 0.5. So how many, I wonder how many of the former non-detect reports by Gelman and EGLE were either 0.3 or 0.5 to 0.099, 0.99. In other words, how many of those non-detects really should have been detects if they had been using a more exact method? I wonder if the DEQ, the EGLE, has now thought about going back to all the non-detect locations and resampling now that they can detect below 1 part per billion, because again, that gives us a heads up on where the dioxane might actually be. So I'd suggest that EGLE do that, require the company to do that when it's the company sampling. And EGLE, of course, they're going to redo that for the peripheral. All right, I think that's all I have. Then I'm always adding some new layers to the Gelman Google Earth mashup. I'll post those as I find time, like you, Dan. And then we need to talk about when we're going to return to in-person or at least a hybrid CARD meeting. I think we can't do it at SIO without this year because it requires getting reservations a month ahead, but maybe we should think about this for 2023 and continue with Zoom only, or maybe always Zoom only because it's so much easier for travel for everybody. Maybe once a year have an in-person meeting or something. So I think that's all I have right at the high noon mark here. Any questions?
Did you want to mention the mayor's green fair?
Oh, I do. It is on here, isn't it? Yeah, I've signed up for it as SRSW, and we'll have card materials there as well. So we need some volunteers to help staff that. It's good that it's outside of the summer festival, so I don't have conflicts anymore making the first day of summer festival and going to the green fair. So I appreciate it being when it is. And
Okay.
I'm not sure where it is. I think it's downtown still. Does anybody know? I'll have to post that again. But anybody that wants to help out, definitely we need help with, it might be more well attended since it's not butting up against, it's actually part of the A2 tech events that week. And
anybody that wants to volunteer can just send you an email and
send me an email or whatever.
Alrighty. Josh, I saw your hand go up. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, just in response to the detection limit for 1,4-dioxane, just want to make it clear that lawfully we cannot require Gelman to go below the 1 part per billion. We have target detection limits that are promulgated into rule, and to change those, we have to go through the rule promulgation process. So currently, that's something that we cannot do. We're the EGLE, working with the EGLE lab, we decided that the samples that we paid for with obviously taxpayer dollars would go down to the 0.5, but as far as Gelman's concerned, they're meeting their obligations under the law. Again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I think we're going to move ahead to non-agenda items, and Glenn has his hand up, I think, for that particular item.
Well, I had a question for Roger, actually, and maybe non-agenda also. Roger, you mentioned some unpermitted dredging in the Honey Creek tributary. Do we know any more about that? What's that all about?
I know it happened. I know we pointed it out to the proper authorities. I don't have any feedback about.
Well, I can tell you that I filed a PEAS report, Pollution Emergency Alert System, and basically got ghosted by the state.
Well, I have some photographic evidence.
I do too.
Yeah. And I'm not even sure that it was on their property, because according to the county mapping, where they were dredging was actually not their property.
I agree, it was borderline.
So is anybody here from Eagle able to address this item?
No, I'll check into it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I remember, and this is off the top of my head, I remember that I was told about the unnamed tributary, some dredging, and I thought there was a permit. And but again, it's been a while, and I'll go back and see if what permits were issued, and bring that information in the future.
Yeah, I'd like to see a copy of that if there was a permit, because I should have been on the email.
My recollection was they filed a permit application and then withdrew it for whatever reason. But then some activity did take place in the stream itself.
And you're talking about the unnamed tributary where they basically cleaned up the debris along the sides, the trees, and where it had filled in the dredging. So, and do you have a location by any chance, Roger? Is it closer to the outfall, just west of the outfall?
It's downstream from the outfall. And can we stop calling it the unnamed tributary? Can we name that tributary, since it's already been named by Gelman, or Gelman's consultant?
Well, that's what's in our files stuff.
Yeah, but it's time there's too many unnamed tributaries. That one at least has a name, and so does the southern tributary have a name. So we should name things so we know what we're talking about.
So we're running kind of long here. I'm gonna try to move us ahead.
Any other non-agenda items?
Glenn, did you have anything more?
No, I'm just puzzled by what happened or didn't happen.
Yep, I understand. So then I'm going to lower your hand. I'm going to move on to Eric.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks for doing this at the meeting. If I'm the last thing on the agenda, I will understand if people have to go, because I'm going to have to be a sort of extensive for the record. As many of you know, I'm running for mayor of Ann Arbor in November of 2022. And as you also know, I've been a member of CARD for Roger, 6 years or so, and been to many meetings. I don't remember how many. And I've been following CARD, obviously, with great amount of horror, as most of the other people have here. And I applaud everyone in this room. This is a classic watchdog group made up of volunteers mostly, and staff, who are dedicated to the one thing, which is the public good, the public health, and protecting our groundwater. So I have a great deal of affection and love for everybody who is working toward that end. Of course, we have to thank Dan and Roger, Dan Bicknell, and who has made a lifetime of this, and Roger Rayle, who has made a career of highlighting the locations and collecting the data and making it so that the average person can understand it. So thank you, because I have to admit, I understand 10% of what's going on in the room, but I just rely on what you guys are saying. And the brain power in this room is fucking phenomenal. There's Vince and Rita and Mike Moran, who's been here all the time, and Kathy and Beth, all these people who have hung in, and Kathy Griswold and Kathy Kay and James, and of course, Congressperson Dingell, who has been here, and all of the people who are coming to these meetings over and over and over again and getting the same answer from Gelman. The answer being, well, we're in court, or we're going to think about it. We all know what Gelman is doing. Everybody in this room knows they're dragging their feet and just dragging us through the courts and wasting everybody's time in the public. And it's only helping to harm the public good and to line the pockets of attorneys. I'm sorry. So let's move on there. As mayor, I, of course, would pledge to direct as much resources of the mayor's office as possible to this endeavor, to back CARD, because CARD is the neutral arbiter of all of this stuff. They're not hobbled by the law as the DNR people are. And I believe the science is there, and I rely on their science. So that's the bottom line, is that everything we can do, we have to start doing now. We have to start doing yesterday on this, and starting with urging the EPA to get involved, as Congresswoman Dingell has been doing. Thank her. And I have to finally say that the current mayor of Ann Arbor has not, as far as I know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, has not been to a single CARD meeting. So you can see how important it is on his agenda.
Okay.
So I'm here for actually to ask you something as a member of CARD, and I can't do it myself, but I would like someone else to nominate, or to, I should say, to make a motion to endorse me as mayor of Ann Arbor. And with the CARD endorsement, and I don't see anything wrong with it, there's nothing wrong with that if this body votes to do it. With the CARD endorsement, I think it would both help my chances and help the chances of the EPA getting involved, because I'm not concerned about property values as much as the current mayor. I'm concerned about public health. That's the bottom line. So I think that's about it. I don't think I missed anything. I took a lot of notes while you guys were talking, but you know, my thanks to you for what you do, and it's been a pleasure to participate for all these years. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
And Vince and Rita, if I didn't say Vince and Rita, you know, God, everybody who has been so amazing for all these years hanging in.
Alrighty. So
And
before
you, Jack, and one other thing, and Jack.
and before I call on James, I have to move this along.
Okay, thank you.
Before I call on James, I want to mention that someone has expressed a concern about our October meeting, which is scheduled for a Jewish holiday. If those who schedule our meetings would take a look at the October 4th meeting date and determine whether it's appropriate to hold that on a holiday, I'd appreciate that. I'm going to call on James now, keeping in mind that we're 10 minutes over already.
I'll be as brief as I can. Just as an FYI related to City of Ann Arbor matters, Council Member Kathy Griswold is a sponsor of the resolution on tonight's agenda, calling for a sense of the city resolution to call on the legislature to legislate new polluter pay laws. The rescission of the old one under the Angle administration put us in the fix that we're in. It would certainly go a long way, I think, in terms of moving us forward, whether if we have federal involvement or not. I'm putting in notice that I'd like to have CARD act on a similar resolution at the next meeting in October, whenever we decide to have that. I want to have a chance for CARD members to have a review of the resolution. I'll probably be dovetailing off of Council Members of Griswold's resolution, whether it passes tonight's meeting or not. I think it'd behoove this organization to also express that sentiment as well. We're also I also mentioned at the very beginning of the meeting, a lot has happened in the 2 months we haven't met, and that is the inaction of tri-bar manufacturing in terms of halting a spill of hexachloromium into the Huron River tributary, which has caused great concern to us. We discovered that the impact is minimal. EGLE is investigating and doing kind of some enforcement action related to it. I may have language related to that and with tri-bar in terms of that resolution, but what tri-bar has done already in terms of release of PFAS. Earlier, we can't eat the fish out of our beautiful Huron River. So that in itself is a problem. But at any rate, I wanted to flag this for potential future action at the October meeting. And I'll have it circulated so this body can take an informed action with respect to this.
just for sake of clarity, are you offering to send us language for that resolution that you want us to pass at the next meeting?
Correct.
Okay, sooner rather than later, but I appreciate your efforts.
All right, thank you.
Anything further for this meeting?
I just want to make one quick comment about Tribar and the hexavalent and chromium that was removed by Wixom sewage treatment plant. Maybe somebody at Eagle can tell what happens to that sewage after, that might have hexavalent and chromium. Does that get disposed of properly? It's not being put on farmers' fields or anything like that, right? Maybe next time.
Yep. Already, I'm going to call on Ann.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Hi, Ann Bannister here, and I just wanted to follow up on Eric Lipson's speech and, if possible, make a motion that CARD do endorse him for mayor or set in motion the appropriate questionnaire for the candidates to make an endorsement for mayor. I think Eric Lipson would clearly be a much more impactful choice on the mission of this group. And I think it would help him to have a CARD endorsement. Thank you.
So I'd like to speak to that briefly. I'm not sure that it's appropriate for CARD to make an endorsement because governmental bodies are members of this organization, and I'm not sure that we should drag them into the political process. I think that any individual member of CARD can endorse. Roger endorsed me when I ran for office. I think that that's appropriate, but I will take this up as a discussion matter with the members of the executive board, and we can talk about it in a future meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So Ann, I think you did make a motion, but I'm asking you to be patient and let us explore whether that's appropriate or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, I totally understand the concern of examining that issue and whether it's appropriate or not in this case, whether those rules apply to CARD or not.
All right.
As an advocacy group.
Thank you for your understanding.
Oh, for sure.
So our next meeting is currently scheduled for October 4th. We're going to look at whether that conflicts with the holiday and whether we shouldn't reschedule it. A notice will go out between now and the next meeting. Any further discussion? I think I'm going to call this meeting finished. 15 minutes over.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Roger.
So what happens when we skip a month meeting? We have more stuff to cover than cover in 2 hours.
We do. Good luck, Eric. We'll be in touch.
Yeah, thanks, James.
Yeah, good luck,
And
Eric.
Roger, I'll see you at noon.
That's right.
Oh yeah, thank you all. We'll see.
At 1, right?
So, hi.
I have to run.
Okay. Hey, Rita. Good to see you. She's gone. You're out of here. I'll talk to you later, Roger.
I've got another meeting.
That's cool.
There was a Detroit news reporter on this CARD meeting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she's going to interview me and Jack.
Oh,
and
good.
CARD board members that want to get involved.
Perfect.
And I'm gonna do a quick Zoom with her to go over any questions she might have that what I covered. So,
Cool. Yeah, I thought Jack handled it well. My request for someone to make the motion, and
yeah, I have
was as
that
usual.
same problem with SRSW. SRSW is a 501c3 nonprofit, so we're forbidden to get involved
In
endorsements. So when
endorsements, yeah. I should have thought of that, but you know what? That's okay.
Because card has government entities involved, and they, of course, can't have their name associated with it.
Right, they can't.
Right. So I think that the way that Jack's phrased it is probably as good as we're going to get the individual members.
Yeah, I agree.
And then you
I
get more
agree.
endorsements that way.
Well, sure, absolutely.
Anyway, I
People
gotta
will.
run. Good to
Yep,
see you.
talk to you later. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Meeting.